If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined by Tamar Hermes. Tamar, thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate you joining the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So Tamar is another referral from my friend, Mandy McAllister. So thank you so much, Mandy, for sending over some great guests for us to interview. We were chit-chatting before the show started, as I have such a bad habit of doing, and heard some cool stories and got some great insights that y'all are going to miss out on. So I'm going to try and get her to rehash it for us. Tamar, can you start off telling us about your story, kind of where you got started and what you've all got your hands into? It sounds like you're into a diverse amount of real estate projects. So what's your story?
Yeah. So I started out over 20 years ago, and I bought my first duplex in Los Angeles. Pretty typically wanted to stop trading time for money. And that seemed like a really good way. I was an executive in television and saw the opportunity of not having to pay as much rent if I owned a place and had a tenant. So that's where I started. And from there, I kept buying duplexes and in the Los Angeles area and grew my portfolio that way. Over time, I started to realize that I wanted to do less work. And so I sold properties and then moved into a lot of passive investing. And in the passive investing world, have gotten involved in a lot of projects. I'm still active because of the real estate professional status, which is a tax benefit. If people don't know, you probably talked about it on the show before because it's such an important feature of being a real estate investor. So I do enough to be active, and then I have a lot of passive deals as well.
Awesome. I feel like you skipped a whole lot in that little summary. So you started off buying duplexes in LA 20 years ago, and then today you live in Austin, and you focus primarily in passive investing. And I think you mentioned before we started the show, you also have Airbnbs. I also want to dive a little bit more into that conversation about the real estate professional status, because it's kind of a weird issue for me lately, for a couple of reasons. One, I fought with my CPA a lot about whether I could claim it, because I had a corporate job, accumulating a bunch of real estate, and even though I spent way more time doing real estate, he was just hell bent on not claiming it because of having the W-2 income would just send up too many red flags. So I'm always curious to get other people's opinion on that. And if you say I'm right, I'm definitely going to send him a copy of this recording. He's one of my best friends, so we pick a lot on the subject. But the other thing is syndicators these days tend to advertise that real estate professional status like everybody qualifies. Like, oh, you're an engineer? Here, invest in my deal, and you can get 113% bonus depreciation year one. And I just don't think it works that way. And I've almost, and I'll ask everybody, hoping that somebody will prove me wrong. But I feel like the way it's advertised, it's almost like everybody can take advantage of it. But it's really a very, very, very small niche of people that can actually take advantage of it. So what's your opinion on that subject?
Yeah, so this is a big topic because the reason why a lot of people want real estate professional status is because it enables you to take deductions both on active and passive losses. So it does create this large pool of depreciation that can even offset W-2. First, I'll say I am not a CPA, although I have a lot of good friends that are very successful CPAs. So I do, and I have a good CPA. So I do have a lot of discussions around this. And I really always like to follow the rules. Like Tom Wheelwright will always say, like, just find your rules and make sure that you abide by the rules and then use the tax laws around that. So that's why you always want to understand what the government is asking you to do and what the rules are so that you can abide by them, because otherwise you do run the risk of being told that your deductions are disallowed, which can be quite pricey. So essentially, I'll just tell you in a nutshell from someone who's not a CPA, but who knows a fair amount about this, which is that you do need to have 750 hours of active participation. So it means that you are actually actively involved in the real estate deals, and that you don't have other people that are involved in the same deals that do any more work than you do technically, although there's a lot of GPs on a deal that would all take real estate professional status, and that could be in an audit. That could be something that is a conversation. As far as W-2, the reason why generally, I do know one person that has a large W-2 and did go through an audit and made it through with flying colors. But when you're a W-2, the reason why generally you cannot take real estate professional status is because the IRS automatically will look at you and say, well, how can you work 750 hours actively in real estate if you work this many hours in a full-time job? So in the one case that I know, he had real estate professional log, because the log is really important. You really need to have proof of what you're doing and keep a log. And then the other piece was that he was able to show a lot of properties that he was involved in. Those are kind of that's kind of the overview.
So what does it mean involved in? Because I think about like how I spend my time, and it's all real estate all day, but his kind of rebuttal to that comment was, but it excludes investor level activities. So how do you differentiate between an investor level activity and like a real estate professional activity?
Well, there are certain things people think that if they're just looking at properties, then that counts, or if they are driving to properties, then that counts. It's very, very specific in the tax code about what is considered active and what's considered passive. So generally it's like, if you're a property manager and you're talking to your tenants every day, or you're the one who's fixing everything. Like I know people that do all their own rehabs. They literally physically do their rehabs. Well, they're actively involved in that project for sure. There's no dispute. They're, got a hammer to the wall and they're banging it out. So those kinds of things. The other thing I should add, and this is all stuff you should check with your CPA, and I just want to say also about, because I am in the wealth building space, is that if you have a CPA that doesn't seem very savvy or on top of the real estate rules, if you're listening to this podcast and you've grown with a CPA and you love them, but now you're really into real estate, you should consider looking for another CPA, because there could be a lot of money being left on the table. You can still take depreciation if you're not a real estate professional. It's just a passive gains against passive losses. So there are still deductions that you can take. There are still opportunities, and you just need to have the right tax team, and you need to do your own research. I'm a huge advocate of people doing their own research. I'll also add that when you're looking through this, if you're into Airbnbs, there are certain rules that apply specifically to Airbnbs in different hours that you need and requirements. So I would just say, just do your research. And if you really don't qualify, then think long and hard. If you and your CPA want to go down that road, just know that if in the event that you're audited, you may or may not get that deduction.
So I was smiling when you said if they don't do it, you should go find a new CPA. So again, my CPA is a good friend of mine. We always pick her into the subject. And we were at a conference and we were talking to Tom Wheelwright, and he said that very comment. He was like, if your CPA doesn't let you take upside, usually you'll find another CPA. And I said, you hear that, John? If my CPA does it, he goes, well, then you should go to Tom, because if you bitch about my $10,000 bill, you're really going to have a hard time with the $50,000 bill he gives you.
Well, Tom has teams now, right? So you're not, he has all kinds of franchises and and it's not inexpensive, but I think the thing is also, as we're expanding wealth, one of the things that happens is that, you first get into real estate and you're thinking, oh, I want to cash flow like, $300 a month. Like if I'm cash flowing $300 a month anywhere in the world, and to me, it's a bust. Like that's just not, that's not a good deal for me. I would never even go into something like that at this point in my career. And it speaks to the expansiveness in terms of how I look at my dollars. Like if I'm not making this amount, then it's not worth it to me. At a certain point, if I'm not paying enough to a CPA, then I'm questioning whether or not that CPA is really going to give me the value that I want, because the truth is that you could be looking like, oh, well, if you complain about a $10,000 bill, how will you feel about paying 50? And then I would ask the second question, which is that, okay, well, if I'm paying 50 and I'm saving 300, or if I'm paying 10 and I'm saving 15, let's look at it, right? So do the whole math equation, not just the small equation in terms of, what really is your ROI and what actually do certain professionals know in the tax field that could really benefit you, and don't think, oh, well, I don't want to pay this much. And it happens a lot, like as we're expanding and as we're growing our wealth, to start expanding your mind to be thinking about bigger dollars. And it's the same thing with deals. I mean, we look at, a lot of people that start out with single family homes and then they want to buy multifamilies, or then they want to get into mobile home parks, or they want to get storage because they start realizing, wait, there's more money to be made. So all of that is expanding. And then when you have a bigger, more complex structure, you may need a tax person and attorneys and a team that is able to wrap their head around that structure and that is supporting you to expand that structure. Because otherwise you're in a situation where you're kind of growing, but you're growing at the level of where you used to be and not where you are. It's that old saying, like where what got you to where you are now is not going to get you where you want to be.
Right. Absolutely. So kind of fill in the gaps for us between starting to buy the duplexes 20 years ago and then moving all of that into these passive projects. So what did that look like? I'm assuming 20 years ago was pre-2008. So like you were in the real estate game during the crash. And so, how was that? And I'm assuming at the time you still had your broadcasting, your television job. So to tell us a little bit about like weathering the storm, how you came out on the other end, and then how those assets progressed through the last journey.
So it's interesting, right? And it's an interesting conversation because that was 2008. Now we're in 2022, and a lot of people feel like we're heading into another situation that doesn't look the same, but could have, even bigger ramifications than what we were into previously, as far as, the amount of money that's been poured into the market and a lot of issues that we're having in our economy. I would say that because I am a double kind of hit investor and not a huge, crazy risk taker, I never fell to like, oh my gosh, I was decimated. I had, 5 projects that I was building and everything fell apart. I'm generally pretty conservative, and that served me well. I mean, it's one of the things I talk about a lot on my platform. I just wrote a book called The Millionaires Mentality, and it's a professional women's guide to building wealth through real estate. And it's the whole idea of like, you don't need to take huge risks unless you're that kind of person, unless you're young and you really want to. You can just keep hitting doubles and doing really great. And in fact, even we met through Mandy, but also through GoBundance, and David Osborne, who's David Osborne, the head of GoBundance, he will always say, it's doubles, it's singles and doubles, it's singles and doubles consistently. And that's and he has several books if anyone wants to read more about his work, because he's really quite a brilliant investor.
Absolutely. So 2008 was smooth, I'm assuming, because you you bought your duplexes at a reasonable price. And,
Yeah, I won't. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was smooth, but it wasn't. I mean, there are bumps in the road, but it wasn't anything where I was decimated. Couldn't afford the overhead. Had to sell the houses. Nothing like that.
Yeah. So, what do you think? You brought up the subject that, and I'm certainly feeling it.
What do I think?
What do you think about the current market environment, where we're headed,
Okay.
what we're going through today? I feel it in some aspects of my business. I do syndication projects, and I have a bunch of rental properties, and I flip houses. I can tell you, I've got a bunch of houses that I was planning on selling in the next 3 months. I'm not going to be able to sell for as much as I was planning. And
Right.
it'll be fine, but you know what I mean? It hurts, you know what I mean? But so where do you think we'll end up in the next 6 months, in the next year? We just raised the rates again. Do you think we're coming to a screeching halt? What is your general feeling about the market conditions?
Right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm the first person to say, I don't really know. I know a lot about money. I know a lot about real estate, and I'm not sure, but I can look at basic facts, which are going to give us some indications, right? So right now, the interest rates have really climbed. It's taken a lot of people out of the market, and it's got a lot of people scared because people can't afford to buy what they could buy at 3% anymore. And also we're seeing halts in the market. I mean, the Airbnb market's slowed. A lot of things have slowed because people are nervous. Stock market's going down. Bitcoin, all crypto crashed. We see a lot of signs of a transition coming. Now, we also know that there's still a low inventory, and that there's a lot of money that poured into the market that has a lot of negative implications for how this economy will live, how the world will be able to survive this. So it's going to be hard to predict. I would just say, make sure you have cash on hand. Make sure you got a passport you can leave the country. Make sure that as you're investing, that you're investing in deals that are solid, in deals that have a lot of meat on the bone and that are really conservative. And just, continue and just make sure that you're, being responsible. And I think the times of being greedy are kind of over, and that we need to just be aware. Because, I mean, in terms of, whether interest rates go up more or down, I mean, the truth is, I was listening to a call yesterday and they were saying, oh, the interest rates are going to go up over 2% more, then they're going to drop in 2024. But we don't really know. And the truth is that, yeah, we'll make a big difference in the bottom line, but we have a lot of other factors at play also. I mean, we've got, let's say you bought 20 Airbnbs and you bought them at 3%. So you've got a great loan, but now no one's renting your places. At a certain point, how much reserve do you have to keep up that home? How prepared are you to weather a storm where you might not be able to find the same kind of income? Did you buy properties where you could cash flow them and get a long-term tenant in? Do you have an exit? So all my Airbnbs, I could put long-term tenants in and they cash flow great. So I prepared. I was always ready for a storm. I'm always ready for a storm, even when it was great. So those are just a few things. I think, I think that the main thing also is, trust yourself. Don't get completely panicked and paralyzed by changes in the world, because these are also opportunities where wealth is made, where opportunities are made, and you'll probably take advantage of some of those opportunities in addition to maybe not faring as well at the top of the market with certain deals. And it's okay. It's just money is just that's what it does. Sure. It moves, it ebbs and flows.
So you're mostly passive today. What type of projects do you passively invest in?
Okay. Yeah. And I'll say I'm not mostly, because I'm still a real estate professional. So I do have properties that I manage. and that I need to, that I'm in charge of. But I definitely have a large portfolio. With that, I have a multitude of, you name it. I have hard money loans. I have notes. I have multifamily deals. I have storage unit. I have mobile home parks. I'm also in private equity deals. So, I mean, I really have a diversified portfolio. I even have projects where I have Airbnbs, and I'm passive in those Airbnbs. So I put money in so that I own equity and get cash flow, but I don't manage the properties and I don't do anything. There's a couple like that I've done.
Oh,
And I got all my money out of the deal already. So this worked out really well. I'm really happy with that.
awesome. Yeah, I've seen a deal come across my way like that. So that's great timing to have recovered all of your capital, right? Before it kind of slowed. What?
Yeah, a lot of capital came in.
What? Tell me a little bit about the notes and the hard money loans. We don't hear about much about those.
Yeah, sure. So I love notes and hard money loans. I do those with funds, and I also do them in individually. And the reason why I like them is because you can make you can make a great return, and you don't have to do any work, and you can negotiate different kinds of rates on those. The other thing is that they work very well inside of self-directed plans. So if you have a self-directed IRA or you have a self-directed 401k, you can actually use that money really, really effectively to just loan it to someone and then get the money back. Because one of the retirement plan regulations is to not commingle and not to be actively involved with that money. That money needs to be invested and then put back in. You're not supposed to have a hand in the retirement funds. And so the notes and hard money works really well. And I've done deals where it's just like any hard money lender that has a big operation going, where it's 12% and 2 points. I've done it where I have equity in deals. I love those. I love when I can get a piece of the equity. I'm doing some now where I have 12% and I'm actually keeping equity in some deals that we're going to be hanging on to. So they'll have longevity to them. So you can really structure anything inside of it. And you have a lot of flexibility when you have cash and you are meet the right people to put that money to work for you.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you have a pretty diversified passive portfolio, and you mentioned a lot of different areas. How do you determine how to allocate how much to which area? So I guess your asset allocation, where do you, or is it random, or are you very specific about, I want X number of dollars in private equity, I want X number of dollars in multifamily, I want X number of percentage in the notes versus what's your I guess thought process around it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's really important. And it's something that, as your portfolio builds, you're really starting to look at. Because at first it's just like, I just got to get a couple houses. I got to get some money going. And then all of a sudden it starts to accumulate. And then you have to start thinking about how you're allocating. So I mentioned already, self-directed funds. So I do have retirement funds. I have personal funds. And so the first thing I look at is, do I like the deal? Do I like what the investor's doing? Do I like the strategy? Do I like the exit plan? Do I like the projected returns? Do I think the operator knows what they're doing? Do they have experience? Have they exited before? So I ask all those questions. Once I decide on that, then I look at, okay, how will this best serve me? So for example, with notes and for hard money lending, there's no depreciation, right? So already it lends itself better to a self-directed plan, because if I'm going to do like a multifamily or any kind of property, I would want that in my personal so that I could take advantage of the tax deductions. So that's one of the first ways I look at it. In terms of allocation, I'm someone I like to put a bit in everything. When you're an accredited investor, minimums tend to be anywhere from 50,000 to upwards of 1 million to get into deals. And so I tend to mix and match depending on, how much I believe in the deal, what I think about it, and how much money actually I have to allocate. So right now I'm a lot more conservative because like a lot of people, we're holding cash right now, right? Because we're waiting for a fire sale and for our next opportunity to come in. And so, no one wants to be cash poor. So a lot of the deals that come in that I really like right now, and there have been several, where I'll put money in, it'll usually maybe be anywhere from 50 to 250. So 50,000 to 250,000 in a deal. And the other thing is that sometimes deals can be 25,000. And I'm sure you've talked about the fact that you don't always have to be accredited. So some people that are new to passive investing, you can also be in a syndication with as a sophisticated investor if the plan's set up in that way.
Sure, absolutely. So do you typically bet on the jockey or the horse? I have a lot of like sophisticated investors, kind of like that, or even accredited investors that just aren't like super real estate intensive, and they I mean barely look at the deal at all. They're like, well, I believe in sterling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody with such active experience as yourself, are you going in and like deep dive underwriting the deals that you're investing in? Or are you like, well, I know Jamie, he knows what he's doing, so I'm gonna give him my money?
I used to bet more on the jockey, but now I bet on both because I really think that it's important that you understand what is going on. I've lost money before. Even, a jockey knows only what a jockey knows, but there might be some choices, especially now, like some investors, they're doing the bridge loans for 3 years because they feel like the way the numbers work and the market works that they can make a bridge loan work. And now, in my estimation, I'm thinking, well, do you have a plan in place after that 3 years, or are you going to be forced to sell? One of the deals that we were just talking about that I was a GP in Denver, well, one of the ways we got this last deal was that the investors had done the rehab and they did a great job, and there was meat on the bone. They'd made some money, but they would have made a lot more if they didn't need to exit when they did, but their loan was due. And so we made it a win-win and got the deal. But again, if you have that deadline, so even if somebody's a great jockey, you still need to look at, what are their loan terms? What are their projections? When are you going to get your principal back? Who are other potential partners? I had one deal too where I went in and the woman's very seasoned, and then in the last minute she ended up taking on partners and didn't really tell any of the investors, and the deal kind of went south because she had given away a little bit too much of her control, and she couldn't she couldn't do the work that she knew could be done that we had all kind of invested with her about. So in that case, actually, she is actually buying all the investors out with the projected return. That's the other thing, is that you also want to look at investors that care enough about their reputation. Well, everybody cares about their reputation, but I mean, also has the means to kind of, have the connections, has the liquidity. Like she had enough money where she could say, look, it's going to cost me $500,000 to buy all you out, but I'd rather do that and save face with you than, have you stay in a deal that you don't feel like you want to stay in anymore. So, things like that are really great where, the jockey's actually looking out for you to make sure that you're taken care of as a passive investor. And I think that's a big deal. And I think there's so many great investors in this space. And I think most people really do care about their reputation. It's just that sometimes you can be, especially in a market like this, if you're caught off guard, you could get caught underwater and may just not be able to fix it. So It's nice when you have reserves.
Awesome. So if you were starting all over in a market like we're in today, so fast forward 20 years, but it's 2020, rewind 20 years, but it's 2022, you're just getting started, knowing everything you know now, what would you have done differently? Or what advice would you give to somebody just getting started in this?
Well, the one thing that I would say is to explore your options. That's one of the things that I talk about in the book, which is that there's not just one way to invest. You may be someone that just wants to do passive investing. And, we hear all that, like you think originally like, oh, I got to buy a single family home or I got to do an Airbnb because it's kind of trendy and it works and it's fashionable. But, I was talking to a client yesterday and she was like, God, before I met you, I got into this Airbnb and I thought I was going to be passive because I have a manager. And it turned out she had a flood in the property. And guess what? Guess who was dealing with the insurance company? She was. And she owned several businesses. And she was like, this is not passive. Like, I don't like this. She would have been much happier, giving you sterling a couple $100,000 and making the money that way. So, there you go. Right. So the thing is to really understand your temperament, understand what kind of investor you really want to be is really important. That's the first thing. And, to kind of explore your options. And then from there, a lot of what I would do is the same because a lot of it has to do with understanding the numbers and the mindset, right? Because a lot of people are just scared of real estate. They're scared to invest. I was told by so many financial advisors, oh, you don't want to get into real estate. Oh, you're going to lose your money. Oh, you're really not making as much money as you think. And it's like, no, I'm actually not making as money as I think being invested in your dumb stocks. That's where I'm losing money.
I find not very many financial advisors know much about finance.
They just don't know. Well, a lot of them, some of them are good, but a lot of them don't hold true to the fiduciary responsibility. And then the other thing is that they often don't know a lot about real estate because they don't make money in real estate. And so I understand like they're not trained in that because there's no skin in the game for them. But, really, that's why for me, that's why I'm an advocate for women. That's why I'm an advocate really for anyone to learn about their finances, to understand what it is that their money is doing for them and what they want it to do and to take ownership of that. So even if you have a financial advisor, know how much they're charging you, know how much you're actually making. You need to understand what is going on. I am not a proponent of leaving my money to anybody. Now, I'm a little controlling, I'll admit, but I will also say that, sometimes it's good to be a little controlling with money because, it's your money. And if it's gone, it's gone. Yeah.
But I had this conversation a lot recently and I'll make like comment or I'll create content around don't pay off your mortgage. If you have 3% mortgage, you can invest the difference by 15% and you're keeping all this delta. And a million people come up there, we're not making 15%. Who's making 15%? You're making 15%. And like the reality is, if you go dump all your money over with the Edward Jones guy, you know what I mean? Like, there's a good chance you're not going to make 15%. But if you're making like very educated, calculated, active, intentional decisions, and you're taking ownership of that process and you're educating yourself and you're getting around other folks like yourself, and we're all making 15+% on everything, right? And that kind of sounds like what you're talking about. It's like, don't go dump it. Like if your whole like financial business model is to go dump your retirement account with the guy at the insurance company down the road who's trained to sell you insurance and stick your retirement funds in some mutual funds, just plug and play, like, yeah, you're gonna get 6%.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned insurance, though, because I actually am a proponent of whole life insurance. And
Are you one of those infinity banking fanatics?
I am. And I actually do. I actually work with probably the person that I think is the best in the country at it.
Who's that?
And I'm licensed. His name's Will Duffy. But if you're interested, come to me because I work in conjunction with him and that. And I would love to, to have a conversation about that. But yes, I do think that there's a place for it. And I do think that it can be quite viable. So I do like it.
So, well, there's another topic we can dive into. So give me the elevator pitch for the infinity banking, for the whole life insurance, and you're borrowing against your own money and then you're earning interest on both sides. Is that Give me or give our listeners the deal.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand with whole life insurance is that there isn't one size fits all. So you could go to 10 agents and they'll all sell you, they'll all have a partnership with a different insurance company. They'll have different sorts of terms, and they'll also have different criteria and interest rates in terms of borrowing and in terms of what they pay. So with the way that I like to work it is to make sure that you're getting paid on all of the interest that you put in, and there's certain ways that the plan needs to be set up, and that you also understand that you can make. There are ways where after 24 hours, like the way that we do the policies, you can get 90% of your money out the next day. So there's very few plans I've ever seen like that. And that's one of the key things for me, because if I'm going to put my money to insurance policy, yes, I want the insurance there. It's very viable. I mean, there's some realities in terms of having $1 million policies and being able to leave that tax free to your loved ones, or, a charity or whatever speaks to you. But just to have that and be able to also put that money in and be able to take out 90% to borrow at 5%. Or less annualized, and make money on, and start pumping the gas on that money.
So let me start a caveat by saying I sold whole life insurance for years. In college, I interned with Northwestern Mutual and then continued to work there for a couple of years. So I generally understand how the concept of whole life, but I also understand that they're not all created equal. Some policies this wouldn't work with. And I interviewed a guy a while back, I think Mark Willis, who speaks a lot on the topic. And I want to say he told me that Northwestern Mutual's version of whole life insurance wouldn't work for this program. But so you're making, what is it? What is the typical dividend payment you'll get on one of these whole life policies? 3-4%?
So again, it depends. So the insurance company that we work with, they've averaged 6% for the life of, I don't know, probably the last 150 years. So that, so we look, but I always will estimate low. So I'll say 4%, even though it's been 6%. That's just how I roll.
And then you borrowed the money and you're paying interest. But the interest is, I guess, canceled out by the dividend payment. So you're borrowing your own money for free.
Correct. That's absolutely right. And, if you have a big cash value, once you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you don't have to ask the bank to borrow the money. You've got the money right there.
So
a lot of freedom.
So I guess where my hang up is on it, and please educate me on this, but it seems like a lot of work to use your own money for free.
It seems like a lot of money to use your money for.
Seems like a lot of the whole process. I've got my money. I don't have to do anything to get my money.
Right.
What is the point in me taking my money, putting it in an insurance product, paying a commission, and then borrowing my money back for free? Or borrowing it for whatever percentage I paid, this then offset by their dividend. Where's the benefit?
Okay, so there's a couple of benefits, right? Okay. One is, I don't know, we are just getting to know each other, so I don't know if you have children or family.
Oh, I have life insurance. I have life insurance. I mean, I've got $1 million in life insurance. You have term insurance. Yeah.
Right. So the thing about term is that, at a certain point, when you're 65, probably that
it goes up and it's going to go away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to go away, and you may feel comfortable. You may feel like, look, I'm going to have enough money by then. I don't really care. So you're right. You may not need it. in my mind, I feel like I like the idea of having that tax-free money growing for me. And I'm not really paying for it because, like you said, it's offsetting from the amount that I put in and the amount that I'm borrowing. And then I can take that money and use it for something else. So for me, it's kind of adding a lot of value to me because now I have an insurance policy. Plus, that insurance policy, the death benefit grows over time. The other thing I really like about it is for kids. I also like it. My kids have a policy, and when they're 60, their policy is probably going to be worth like their $1 million policy will probably be worth 3 million or more, which is pretty nice. Like someday, they might be like, God, thank mom for doing this because now we have a $3 million and they need it.
And I bought my niece one for when she was born.
That's cool. That's great.
Type thing. But is that really like the highest and best use of that money?
Well, if you can borrow the money the next day, or is it locked in?
I don't know. This is 15
right.
years ago.
Well, I would say the thing is that, to me, if you ask if it's the highest and best use of your money, if I can use 90% of it the next day, I would say, yeah, because I can take it out. I can use it. So, it doesn't really matter. It's just an added benefit.
So there's undeniable benefits of life insurance, and life insurance is great, and that it is certainly needed. So my question is the benefit of the infinity banking, is it just like you can use the money and then the life insurance is the benefit, or is there like some other financial accelerator taking place in this process? Like, is it really like speeding the growth of the money? Or is it just like you can kind of do all this at one time and life insurance is good and you have life insurance forever and the life insurance is growing? But is there truly any like while I'm alive financial benefit there?
Well, if you want life insurance and you're using term, and let's say, you're pretty young, so you probably didn't pay that much. So for you, it's probably, not very much money. But at a certain point, if you decide you want life insurance and you get term, you might be paying over $1,000 a year. And then in 10 years, that's $10,000 that you get no money back for.
Renting versus owning.
And and then it's going to be gone. So it's just a matter, I do definitely think like some people, I know a lot of wealthy people that use them. because you can also do them, you can stack them. There's also benefits in terms of it being tax-free also, like as an estate. You can also, if you go over the estate sum, then it does count like toward income. But like, let's say you had 3 properties that were, multifamilies that you left for your family and you didn't want them to have to sell them, but then they owe tax when you passed. So then they could use the life insurance policy to do that and then not have to sell the properties. So, there's definitely...
I agree. There's tremendous benefit from an estate planning and an insurance perspective in these programs, and I'm not doubting that at all.
Yeah,
I feel like infinity banking has been promoted lately as like something that is going to be some like extreme financial engine in
I agree with you. It's not, and I love it. And I don't think that it is necessarily. I think that, you're basically not paying for it because you're putting the money in and you're getting the money, like you said, the interest offsets, especially the way we do it, where you get 90% the next day. But the thing is that overall, not really. You're right. There are lots of benefits, and you have to ask yourself, do you want those benefits? And I think at a certain point, when you reach a certain age of wealth, you do. When
you got more money than you can spend in this life,
absolutely.
Your thought processes shift towards planning for the future.
100%.
From like a young, hungry person trying to grow wealth aggressively, get to that point. Like this isn't a supercharger.
Totally. And the benefit, if you're young and you get it, the nice thing about it is that life insurance is fixed. The rate is fixed. So like, let's say I get a whole life policy when I'm, 15. So maybe it's like $5,000 a year or something. And then, if I got it now, it's like $30,000 a year. So there's a big difference in what you pay. So, I mean, that's one of the benefits. And then a lot of people like it for kids also, if God forbid, like a kid develops diabetes or something, and all of a sudden they can't get the life insurance policy.
Sure.
They like to protect them. And I know people that also like infinite banking, or we call it the bank replacement strategy, for the reasons that, let's say you want your niece to learn about money, so you can put the cash value back in there and say, okay, now you can invest it, the way that you see fit.
Oh, cool. Well, look, for the sake of time, I want to hop over to our radio round. 3 questions to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better. The first one is, what is your favorite book?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just going to say my own book because I wrote it and I'm proud of myself. So the Millionaires Mentality.
Okay. Millionaires Mentality. When did that come out?
It came out in April, and It's easy to get. You can just go to tamarbook.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds great. What is your favorite quote?
You know what? The one that came to me is, and I think I feel like I quote, there's so many good quotes, but I love the Jim Rohn quote, like, you'll find a way or you'll find an excuse, because I just think it's so true.
For sure.
Like, there's always a way. There's always a way,
Yeah, for sure. And then what's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Really like riding my electric bike a lot. And my husband and I go every Sunday. We ride to get breakfast, and it's just really fun. It just feels good, and it's just electric bikes are great.
So is that like a motorcycle without an engine? Like you press the tab and it goes?
Yeah, I mean it goes 30 miles. It's pretty fun.
Oh, cool.
Really fun. So I think I love that.
Awesome.
And I like hanging out with friends and having good conversations and learning.
Awesome. So how can our listeners find out more about you, get in touch with you, invest with you, find out about your masterminds, and just network and learn from you?
Yeah, awesome. So they can go to Wealth Building Concierge, CONCIERGE. Somebody told me that was hard to spell. I was like, it's concierge.
That is hard to spell. I like it.
And I was kind of rude about it. I said, when somebody said like, well, concierge, that's kind of a fancy word. I'm like, look, if you can't figure out how to spell concierge, I'm not your girl.
I would definitely have to talk to text that word.
Well, it's fine, but you would figure out how to do it. You'd find a way, not an excuse.
That's right. That's right.
So wealthbuildingconcierge.com. And you could just, if you Google me, you'll probably find stuff on me.
Awesome. Well, Tamar, I really enjoyed getting to know you today. And I wish we had more time because I could chat with you for hours. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm so glad we met and look forward to keeping up with you in your journey.
Yeah, me too. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.